Hello there, friends. Before we jump into it, if you like what we do here on cPDH.guide, the YouTube, and you want to support us in a free way, because, you know, that's what friends do, hit that like, hit that subscribe, even share the damn thing. All right, on to the show.
Hello and welcome. Today, my friends, I have with me, now you're going to know something a little different. I'm going to go on a tangent really quick. You're going to know something different. There's 3 screen captures. And the reason why, I've asked a dear friend of mine, Ryan, to join me today. And because he was a participant in the event that this other gentleman, Obstinate, had won. So we're going to have some input on that. But, you know, just to address the elephant in the room, I've got a third person here today. That is why. But let's focus on the man of the hour, the person of the hour, the champion of the hour, playing Loyal Apprentice. Yes, that's not subordinate. Loyal Apprentice in the Common Cause charity tournament that happened on November 11th. We had 3 rounds of Swiss and a cut to top 4. And yeah, Obstinate, man, thanks for joining us. Thanks for allowing me to reach out to you real quick, be like, yo, let's do this. That sort of thing.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun. You know, Chris, I've been on Chris's stream several times. I'm signed up for this month, Tuesdays. Yeah, he asked me, and I was like, oh, maybe I won't. Then, you know, he reached out, so that's why I played. But yeah, you know, I honestly saw the conversation you had, Ryan, or you, Stark Raptor. There were a couple other people. Can't remember the name of the person who started it. They were asking about Loyal Apprentice in the multiplayer format, and that really was my motivation to play. I made the deck. I had it
really
for a while. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I love aristocrats. I consider it aristocrats.
So that's a wild connection that I hadn't thought about. I'd forgotten about that conversation in the CC. Who was it who asked about that?
So to qualify this, right? So this was a conversation based on the competitive viability of Loyal Apprentice, and what you're saying is that there was some naysayers.
Hold my beer moment when they're like, I don't know if it can be done. I was like, let me do it. Let me show you.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't say anything in there till afterward.
All right. Yeah, interview's done. Good job. All right.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because there was a person who came in, now that I recall, they were curious about Loyal Apprentice. And I think I outlined some like pros and cons for it. And the pro of it being that if you could consistently cast it over and over and over again, that if you always had access to it, that you were always going to have essentially like your battle screech, right? Like if you think about it that way from like a Pauper standpoint, battle screech is a card that wins games, and 1/1 flyers in multitudes win games in cPDH. I've seen that in mono white decks, even with your like Healer's Hawk, Sergovian Angel, you know, your Ranger's Hawk type stuff, Battlefield Raptor, just like flooding the board with those things. And Loyal Apprentice does that on as early as turn 1, right, with a Lotus Petal, and that. Yeah, if you can keep that in play, as we saw in your games, you can do a ton of work. So when you saw that that discussion thread there, what were your first sort of like? Had you already built the list, or was that where you started once you saw that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Loyal Apprentice wasn't I think Gut was my first Gut Iron Throne, so the Rakdos Gut.
Yeah,
it was my first like aristocrats type deck, and you know, Loyal Apprentice was just like I can do all the artifact things. I can, you know, I've got the evasion in the air. And I can run all the pingers. I can just run straight burn spells. So, like, yeah, like that. So, I mean, I hadn't been, it was either that or Rayev, because I kind of want to, I love Rayev too.
Wow.
Some people be sleeping on Rayev, but
look at you flexing some of my favorite lists out there. I love that. That's great. Yeah.
Well, it's a wide spectrum of opportunity.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting, too, that you just made a connection between Gut Iron Throne, Loyal Apprentice, and the other one that I see, and we talked about as well, is TPI, or Third Path Iconoclast, right? That these are all decks that can play a multitude of pingers. One of them is in the command zone. They're all relatively cheap commanders. And And increasingly so, none of them really care to protect their things. They run out these pingers, and because you now have basically 10 in each list, you can just run them out there. They do some damage, they die, and that's fine. It's all like leading to the outcome you're looking for.
So, how long ago? So, what I want to get into is like, how long ago was this conversation? And if it was a while ago, what made you in this previous week, like get to this moment of like, okay, I recalled this conversation, and then yeah, let's get to that. Let's get to that week. Let's make those connections. And like, how did you?
Yeah, here, looking back over Discord for a sec, I saw. I mean, I responded to something earlier, but I think it was in the brewery section. But it really was not that long ago. And the person that brought it up was new to the. Maybe it's not in brewery.
Yeah, I'm looking for it now too. Was it in general, perhaps?
It was either in general or brewery, but it was. Hey, it's Jay. No, okay, it is in brewery.
Okay.
And then Miller Brewing Company. He's more of a. The head-to-head, the 1v1 guy was like, he chimed in about, oh, I love this deck. The commander's banned for these reasons, like you said, can come down turn one with the ritual type, or lotus petal, those kind of things. But yeah, I mean, I was personally of the opinion that it's just value. It generates value every turn, like you were saying, Ryan. Like creature ETBs, artifact ETBs, creature sacrifice, artifact sacrifice. It's red. It's Yeah, it was oh, wait, I just had it. So it was like 5 days.
Yeah, it wasn't long ago. So Hey, it's Jay posted this on the 28th. So it was about 2 weeks ago. And then I think my response to it was followed up on the same day here. Basically encouraging Hey, it's Jay to actually try it out, because really, Loyal Apprentice is one of those commanders that I think a lot of people would naysay, because you're like, well, this is great in a 1v1, but how does this function outside of a 1v1? And it's clear to me that it does that. I mean,
yeah, honestly, that's what gave me so much. I think nobody thought I could do 16 damage from my hand and kill an opponent. So they're like, he's not going to take it to a 1v1. I'm not going to die. I didn't pressure it. Like, we'll get to game. We'll go over each pod, but pod 3, I think, was the hardest one. The second time you were in there, it was so rough. And like, I am deathly afraid of Aranis. I guess what I'm saying is Aranis could have ripped my stuff apart. So
and rightfully so.
I left him alone the whole game. I was like, I'm not coming after you. Everyone, it'd be like a measured decision. Be like, okay, I'm gonna get 2 damage in the air and make a token. Oh, you won't kill this. You're trying to hold down the combo player. But it was just all about, funneling it down. And the games I had lava burst. Here you go, 12 treasures, 7 lands.
Well, so that's an opportunity.
Getting people to underestimate. I'm sorry, getting people to underestimate the fact that I would be able to clap out 2 players and then finish it third on the next turn or 2.
So your approach, so your approach to the deck is generate the value, because we didn't really cover that as well, which kind of gets into that strategy piece. So generate value from the command zone, keep the pressure on the attack, generate mana advantage. How are you doing that? Via rituals?
Well, so honestly, okay, so
because you're finishing with direct damage spells. Yeah,
maybe 4 of the 4 games I drew. I've got, at the time I didn't have sticky fingers. I was like, all right, we can play it. I put it in a sense, but I had the 3 mana generating artifact equipment. I love equipment. We already mentioned Rayoff.
And that's specifically our Prying Blade, Gold Vein pick, the Beantown Beatstick. And then the other one being, are you now on Sticky Fingers? You said so. That's the 4th one.
Yeah, Sticky Fingers is in there. The Shiny Impetus. We didn't see it, but Shiny Impetus is in there too.
That counts.
It's so good.
I hear it's good.
And yeah, like I mean, you totally touched on it right away, Ryan. That those cards just help the commander stay around. They really. Ryan was the only guy that removed my commander in the tournament. I think I did a good job of not really pressuring people or just not being the biggest threat at the table, spreading the damage out. So I got to keep them a bit, but me having a pile of treasures a huge deterrent to somebody saying, "Okay, I'm just going to kill Loyal Apprentice until it can't come back out."
It was really cool to see something that I've talked about. Actually, this has been a concept that I've talked about since I was playing like Witherbloom Apprentice really actively. Is that when you have this really cheap commander and you have a lot of ramp, it has this function of feeling like card disadvantage when you kill their commander, because you know that it's just coming back, and that feels really bad. And especially when you weigh that with the fact that that person isn't the combo player too, and there are combo players at the table, and your precious removal is being basically like discarded to tax their mana. That has a very strong effect on how people make decisions with their removal, and it means that in a lot of games you don't get your stuff interacted with. And so, to be very specific, you in the final game that we played had 12 treasures in play, and that, based on the fact that your commander died like twice, maybe. The first time I removed it, it was with the goal of you not having one of those equipments, because if you don't have one of those equipments and you do remove the Loyal Apprentice early, it does set it back some number of turns. But if you've got 4 of those or 5 of those in your deck with like Shiny Impetus as well, it's amazing what you're able to do. And even to contrast Loyal Apprentice with Loyal Subordinate, which are maybe something that people would like look at and say, oh, these are kind of like same but different. There's a reason to play
a whole different beast.
Yeah, Apprentice,
very similar. Like
if you kill Subordinate, that does actually take a lot of pressure off the field. You kill Apprentice, and the birds are still there, the Thopters are still there, and that makes you more resilient, even though you don't have like card draw as much in the deck, whereas Black does. So the Black can draw cards to get back into the game, but it's like, well, you kill the commander and the birds are still there. So it doesn't really slow anything down.
unless of course it's Breath Weapon, Drown itself,
sure.
Which are there,
2
but
damage,
also
1 damage. They do get wiped. They can get wiped, but I only saw 1 Drown in Tower of that game, and the Aranus player was a little bit
recently downshifted. Thank you, Wizards, right? So it sounds like there's a circumstance that because this topic was brought up to bring everything forward to the day. So since this topic was brought up quite recently in the Common Connoisseurs Discord, the deck was built and fresh in your mind. Did you have any?
I've had it. Yeah, I've had it for a while. If that's what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but
no, what I'm looking for is, was there any consideration? Like, did you do any like brief retooling in this last week? Did you look at the other potential, what your weak spots are in the meta? Did you do anything like that from a strategizing perspective regarding the list?
So the equipment came back in. The treasure equipment came back in my last take, like the night before. I was like, I had already decided that I wanted the X spells in there. I had 2 in there when I played, and the Bale's Invoker, which we saw, which is actually relevant.
That's the latest Invoker, right? That does it does
3 mana,
4/2,
pay 8. Each opponent takes 4.
Yep.
8 colorless.
Yeah. So, since I've replaced them, I said I'll just go with another X spell because those things work so well. But so I knew I wanted big mana, or I'd always played the deck with at least 37 lands, the same way I do Gut, because you just got to throw out lands for the first 5, 6, 7 turns of the game. I love playing 7 lands in 7 turns. Just because what we were talking about before is if you don't have the treasure generator, you'd be like, dude, I'm gonna play this again on turn 4. I'll play them again on turn 6 if I need to.
Keep discarding cards if you'd like, but like it's coming back is essentially what that says, right? Like, and meanwhile, there are other things at the table that probably warrant the removal.
Absolutely. Well, and part of that right there is not only the combo players at the table. Whose job is it to pressure the combo player? Mine. So you can remove my stuff if you'd like, but I'm not going to be able to help you. Take out combo players. And we saw, I think, game 1, Teshar. Game 2, was it Teshar again? And then
there was
game 3, it was
Teshar.
Abdel.
Yeah.
Oh, I played 3 Teshars. Yeah, I played the guy I played turn 1 on game 4. again. So I played 3 Tayshars. But yeah,
Wow.
there was always a combo player at the table.
Yep.
My role was always, hey, you gotta let me have it. I'm one of the 2 decks doing something about him at the table.
Now, now, first of all, I want to call out that you seem like a paid actor almost. Because obviously not. But this is you're identifying your role right at the table. And there was actually one game where I want to highlight where that dynamic of you being the pressure on the control player wasn't actually the case. And that was our final game together. Now, I think a lot of people have
who was the control player in that game? Hold on, because that was Aranis, wasn't it? That was the Aranis.
That's right.
That was the trickiest game to play. Yeah.
That was one of the more complicated games. We went we ended on turns, but it was like we had plenty of time to finish the game. So just to describe that one, we had an Abdel Blue in position 1.
Into,
yep.
Talking about the
and this match was one where we can like explore that dynamic of like who's the beatdown, what your target priority is, which has been a really like hot topic I think lately. And I say hot because it's like one that evokes a lot of like emotions for people. Like the idea that they would sit down to a table and immediately be the target is uncomfortable for some people, right?
Honestly, I had a bad experience with a certain streamer before this went off playing Sivris, where they thought it was explicitly my job to kill the combo player. And I said, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to lose the game to you. And they got upset at me about that. So sometimes, in that game, I definitely set the boundaries. Like, hey, dude, I'm more willing to lose to. I think it wasn't Gretchen. It was Tatiova that game. I said, I didn't exactly say this then, but my mentality was, dude, I'd rather lose to Tatiova than lose to you in a grindy game where I have because he had a Plague Skullka on the board, and it's like he's going to sacrifice a creature, kill my commander, sacrifice. I don't
hold your head underwater.
Yeah. So it's very much the like I'd be willing to like that informed me. It's like, dude, I am not going to help anybody who's like trying to dismantle my board and also telling me to pressure people.
Right.
So that's like, I'm not getting pigeonholed into it's my job to take out the combo player.
And it might actually be in that dynamic because what's happening there is you have a player who has the tools to dismantle you on board. It's known information. And then they're telling you that you're supposed to do something else. Well, they should not have played out. They should not have played out that thing because now you're in that pinch. Like it might have actually been better to sandbag that tool. Just like you would sandbag a Pestilence. Like I've seen people run out Pestilence on boards where where like it interrupts the target priority, right? And I sit on Pestilences a long time for that reason because I do not want to arch enemy myself when I'm not actually the threat at the table until that thing comes down, right? And so like as a heuristic, the idea of the aggro player having the speed, the pressure, the tempo to apply pressure to the combo player is a heuristic. It is not a rule. And I think that's what we're seeing here is like a lot of people have, I've received a lot of criticism for talking about this heuristic, but they're misinterpreting a heuristic for a rule. Of course, you don't always and
I'm
exclusively.
personally glad you said that.
Well, dude, I mean, like we've played lots of games and I've killed you lots of times where you had the combo. And there were other times where you're like, where I'm looking around and you're preemptively warning me, Ryan, what do I not have? And it's like, oh, he doesn't have an untapper. He doesn't have a Mirren Spy. He doesn't have a Battered Golem. What does that mean? He cannot combo until that thing has been in play a full turn. And what do? I attack somebody else because I don't want to waste that combat step. So that's where like it's a heuristic, not a rule. And in the game we played Obstinate, where this wraps back around to that game, there was position 1 Blue Abdel, position 2 Loyal Apprentice, position 3 Indulging Aristocrat, which is the Orzhov extort commander kind of in a way, and then position 4 Aranis Street Urchin. And you correctly identified that my damage paired with Aranis being obliged to remove Abdel every single time meant that you were not the one who had to throw everything at Abdel. And had you done that, you would have lost the game. And where you did instead is you pressured everybody a little bit. And you were actually pretty conservative too. I was paying really close attention. You were exactly that. I was the one receiving the most damage, keeping my life total like in control.
Because you had a life
keeping them all close to each other. Yeah, and demonstrating to Aranis that I was not trying to take him out. Yes. Aranis was the one I was terrified of. I've lost to that deck twice. I think it is amazing.
Scary.
Ain't playing it.
So, like the goat for Aranis Street Urchin, like scary shit. Right? Well, yeah.
And he kept off of me the entire game. He flipped. I think the one questionable thing was he flipped. It was like a Ren's Resolve, and he flipped that. He flipped the Dragon's Breath or Breath Weapon rather, and it was like, oh, I could play this next turn, but then he didn't opt to do that for
too damaging.
Whatever reason,
it was too damaging to all of the collective board. Like I think I had like an extort creature in play, which he kind of I think wanted there, or for some reason I may be wrong on that, but I think it did damage to his board. He had a Elvish Mystic in play, and he also had the Scions, didn't he? I think he had the Scions. So it kind of like made sense in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree. I mean, it kind of like we didn't even really have to talk about it. It just kind of like quietly went away. Then
sure did. I think I mentioned it. I was like, that breath weapon looks kind of bad right now, doesn't it? And he was like, yeah. And then he just never cast it. He had other things to do. But it's so interesting
allow me the opportunity to say, like, this is great. Watching you guys talk about the dynamics. I just wanted to interrupt to say, this is great. Ready? Go.
The other thing that really helped me at the end of that game was you playing Gary. Ryan.
Oh yeah.
That really
I didn't think for a moment that you were going to kill Gary on the stack. So let's lay out that situation, right?
And I thought about it, and then I decided that 3 damage to Ink and 3 damage to Joe is 6 damage.
Well,
which is
killing Joe, and right, and that simplified your target priority. And it was also it was my only 2 cards in hand. So just to lay this out, Joe was at 3 life or 4 life at the beginning.
Still round 3, right?
Yeah, round 3. So and a lot of this stuff will I think focus on that game because it was such an interesting and complicated and well thought out game. Like all the decisions that were made were very like discussed. I think there was a lot of like interesting table talk. The politics weren't toxic. And it was really interesting. So like my last 2 cards in hand were Gary running into a known counter spell from Joe, who held up mana for it, knowing that if I cast if I extorted and then cast my commander, that would trigger my commander to drain an additional 3 and it would have killed him. And so he had to counter whatever I did. But I had Gary and I had late to dinner, and so I was able to cast the Gary without extort. And he countered that, and then I was able to late to dinner with the extort, and then that put enough damage on him to do 4 to everybody, and it was my only play, and I was gonna die if I didn't.
3. It was 3, but yeah.
3. Oh, it was a drain. Yeah, drain for 3. Yeah, and it was my only play because I actually didn't care about the life drain. I cared just about gaining life. And it gave me...
Your comment at the time was like, "This is a play to keep myself alive.
Yeah.
This may not be the best." And I love that scenario. That was great for me. Part of it was you were the other drain deck at the table, and you became a little more scary than I was at the time because you'd hit everybody for 3 and you're gaining life. And part of it was that I was low. I was getting low at that time, and I was starting to consider, can Ank just bang me out with four Street Urchin triggers?
Yeah,
he couldn't quite get there, and I made him use all of them by swinging out on him on one turn. He blocked 1 with the Reacher, and then he killed 4 others, sacrificing the Reacher to do it. But at that moment...
Grabby Giant, right? That was it?
Yep. What happened is you gained enough life that Ank said, "I don't know how I'm going to beat Ryan." Like, you just had too much health. And that's why I believe he focused on you in that moment. Because he said, okay, if Loyal Apprentice doesn't kill me, I should be within reach of killing.
Yeah.
Because maybe he had a lightning bolt in hand. But you were at like 16 health, 17 health, and he's like,
I gained up to 21.
To get through that. Huh?
Right. I gained up to 21 with the Gary because I gained 3 off the extort and 12 off the Gary.
Gary.
Or no, 9 off the nose, 9 off the Gary, 3 off the extort. So I went all the way up to 21, which was
the thing is, See, the thing is, Clay, is that I had 12 treasures in play and like 7
12
lands. So the turn I went
treasures.
for it, it was a lot. It was a fire. It was a lava burst, but it's a fireball. Pay 1 red and X. X was 16. So
Exact
I absolutely
lethal.
knew that I could take out 1 player with that spell. I couldn't take out multiple players. So yeah, the Gary just kind of just lined things up for me at the end of that game.
Yeah, it was pretty
Then it
forced
was
play
getting
on
rid
my
of
part,
Hank.
and then you just had to blow me out. It was like you alpha striked. You did as much damage as you could, and then lava burst.
Yeah, so I held on to the fire blast when Gary came down, and then I used the fire blast to kill Hank from 4. Just like he tried to remove one of my things when I played the Bales Invoker. He's like, "Well, you got me dead."
That's the sacrifice 2 mountains alternative.
Yep. 4 damage.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which it was a little bit tragic because I could have used those 2 mountains to do an X equals 18 the next turn, but what can
Which you
do?
didn't end up needing. That was the wild thing about just how close this game came down to, because had you had 1 less mana, it would have been leaving
the thing is, I accidentally made 1 mistake that turn. I didn't attack with my 4/2 Bales Invoker.
I did see that. I was like, oh my god, I'm lucky.
I mean,
yeah. It was a wild game, and had you not killed me that turn, I
only made a move because I knew I could do it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That lava burst was sitting around for so long. I didn't know who it was going to kill. I knew it was going to kill somebody.
Right.
When you played Gary, I was like, all right, this has got Ryan's name on it.
That pod was an interesting one for me. I felt like I brought Indulging Aristocrat or Indulging Patrician, which is 1 white and a black for a 1/4 flying lifelink. That at the beginning of your end step, if you've gained 3 life, each opponent loses 3 life. And I brought this deck really for the colors, and that's because white black, something I'm going to talk about later today, has access to extort, which is a very it's like a very dynamic mechanic that allows you to not only apply pressure outside of combat, but to gain life. And so it was quite interesting to be at that table because Ank's role, his job, was pigeonholed into making sure that Joe was not able to flicker. He was mainly
the control player, so I think it was always his role. He decided playing that deck.
Yep.
I decided who lives and dies at this board.
Yes.
But no, I agree. I totally agree that Ank's number 1 job, and the reason I left him alone for the majority of the game, because he was taking care of Abdel.
Yeah. And meanwhile, your decisions on on how much you attacked with and who felt very measured, because it was always 1 attacker at Abdel, 1 attacker at Ank, and then the most of your attackers at me, because you correctly identified that my ability to outgain what you were doing or outgrind what you were doing would be a problem for you in the game that was developing, where Ank and Joe had the lowest life totals, and then you were never attacked the whole game, right? You which is crazy. This is another one of those things that we look at game theory wise. I did take, so I wasn't really taking a beatdown. I don't generally. You're right. I'm usually putting out most of the damage. Once. But I got down to 5 at the end of the game. I do remember that I was close to getting burned out. But that wasn't from attacks.
Life loss.
None of it was. Yeah, it was all life loss. And so that's the really interesting thing about that game is again, another game theory element is when you play a commander like Loyal Apprentice, where you have a job at the table to apply pressure to the combo player, assuming there isn't a control player. Airness is unique. Airness turns everything in play into a kill spell. And that's different from other control decks. When I play Thrall Parasite, it's control because my 99 is full of kill spells, sweepers, and edicts, but my commander doesn't repeatedly kill things. It just gains me life and keeps me alive, right? Whereas Airness, its function is to kill things over and over and over again until they can't be played.
Its function is to put lands into play so that even if you kill it over and over again, he can
it doesn't matter.
The commander. And then that's a huge part of it.
Did David play all of his lands in your games together? Because the one game we had together, it was turn 6, and he had 14 lands in play. And it was
Yeah,
like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
remember asking in that game, wait, how did you get to 7 lands if this is turn 6? And he's like, I'm putting them back into. I'm like, oh man, that doesn't go to hand. Because yeah, he had a Cabaretti courtyard going off or whatever. He,
Yep.
he got his artifact land.
And then the
scare
Grey
tiller,
Furnace.
schmare tiller. Aranus is better.
Yeah.
But Ryan, one thing I will say about not being attacked is I distinctly remember I started leaving
Blockers.
3 floppers up.
Yeah,
I started
yeah.
leaving blockers up. That's how close. Like I didn't
Yes.
want the health totals to go any lower till I knew how it was going to shake out.
Yeah. No,
So
that
I
was really
put
smart.
the brakes on it. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
you did. And I noticed that. And that was 3 blockers specifically for Airness. Right? A
Exactly.
3 power worth of blockers for Airness. And that was another thing I was going to point out too. Like I was like really closely paying attention to the way you played that game. It was quite an interesting showcase of like how to make aggro work. Right?
How to do nothing and still win.
Yeah, like and like one of the things I talk about a lot is that you, as an aggro player, you earn your spot at the table uninteracted with from the mid range and the control players when you are attacking the combo players, or when you are serving a role that the table needs. Right? When the table
That's
needs
really
something,
tough,
you're the
too.
pit bull. Like you're the one that like, okay, I'm the problem solver in that moment, and what that means is exactly what we saw in your game. You just didn't get interacted with that much. I targeted your commander with a kill spell. I targeted a creature with an echoing decay, and then I think one of your
Witty Roastmaster maybe too.
Witty Roastmaster died. But like on the scheme of things, compare that to the amount of interaction that Abdel got or that I got.
No, I agree.
Or the Aranus got, right? And that's a huge advantage to playing aggro, but it requires that you understand your role at the table, and you knew it very well.
So
right?
So in that pod, since we've talked about it at length now, who died first?
The combo
Joe.
player, Abdel died when Gary came down.
Who
Yeah.
died second?
So when Gary came down, Ryan was at 12 life. He gained 9, went to 21. We covered that. I can't remember what my health was. It might have been like 14 at the time, 15.
Yeah.
Ank, however,
He was
on
at 6.
like no, he was at like 9, 8 health, and yeah, he went down to like 5. And that was when it was like, this Fire Blast is looking really good in my hand. Right now.
Yeah.
So
This free remove a player.
So Ank died second, and then Ryan.
And then I
was
lost.
last.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like I want to touch base on the roles of the table and stuff like that, and how this deck. Now, the reason why, Ryan, you get so much pushback for this aggro attacks combo component is because the natural enemy to aggro is not combo; it's actually mid range. So the combo player kind of gets juiced out. You know,
I don't know if I would agree with that entirely.
What I'm saying,
I would say that like my example earlier with Sivris, that's exactly what it was. It's like, dude, you've just got the grind game going. Like
so
you're
what
just gonna
happens is the
outvalue
mid-range
me.
player has the opportunity to set up. So it's a tempo thing, and we can agree to
Mid-range
disagree.
or control.
What I'm suggesting is what brings this to mind is that Apprentice is uniquely set up that accrual of value via those treasures allowed that plan B, which is the kill spell. Like he wasn't going to kill you with aggro combat. He was going to kill you with an X spell.
Because
I called out like 5 turns before.
Right.
Several times.
So looking at it, what I'm doing is I'm looking at it through the lens of the main game plan is aggro, but that aggro facilitates a second game plan, which is damage to the face, because you know, had you like the Gary was a stabilizing moment for you, and by all accounts, and versus any other aggressive deck who doesn't necessarily have access to a big ass bolt, right? Like you would have that Gary would have been a stabilizing moment for you, and then you would have just established an engine and just kept going.
It sort of depends, because I had 0 cards in hand, right? So like again, like what a lot of people are mistaking when I'm talking about a heuristic is it's not a hard and fast rule. For example, like in this game, I was actually me applying pressure to the table with indulging patrician is actually in alignment with Obstinate Skulls, which is to apply pressure to everybody and to get them dead. So in that game,
Total's
like
going
we
down.
were like this weird like bad couple where like he's hitting me and I'm okay with it because I'm gaining the life back, but he's also hitting everybody else and so am I. So we were actually in line for a 1v1 where my concern was exactly what happened, and I pointed this out, was there's going to be a fireball, a lava burst, a Kvarik's torch, a rolling thunder,
Yep.
right, with all the treasures in play, right? And so it's a heuristic, but it's not a rule, right? And even like even in it would be different in a matchup with like say where the other players at the table were doing different things. Like if I'm TPI and there's a player who's extorting next to me, I have to cast 3 times as many spells to make up for the one time that they extort one spell, right? But the extort player is seeing everybody's life total go down extraordinarily fast, and they're like not having to do any work. Cast a spell, extort it, chill. I'm not dying to the pinger, right? Like that would be a really different dynamic than what we had here, where Obstinate wasn't getting attacked and had, rightfully so, he wasn't really the problem at the table, right? Like, and so his life total was extra high. He could use that life total as a resource, but a lot of times, like the mid-range player and the aggro player, when I'm playing mid-range, if a combo player or another player were to try and like kill the aggro player's commander, I would consider counterspelling their kill spell. And that's because the aggro player is that aggro player is accomplishing something that I can't. They're applying pressure to the players that I don't always have the tools for. Mid-range has this mix of proactive and reactive spells in our deck, and sometimes you get the wrong half. Right, like that's just how that works, and so I actively will not like kill a gut who's attacking the combo player, and I'll allow them to build up a big board, and they're able to sandbag their threats, their cards, just like you did, Obstinate, where you're sitting there all game with like 3 to 5 cards in hand, right? You just didn't have to do anything, just like turn them sideways, recast my commander, turn them sideways, attach my equipment, turn them sideways, like. And you didn't have to use anything. You got to sandbag so much stuff. So if you're the aggro player, being able to sandbag an enormous amount of resources so that when you turn the corner and then you're ready to kill the other 2 players, the pingers have been keeping them at a low life, at a subdued life total, and you have the resources to rebuild if there's a sweeper like a Drown in Sorrow or an Evan Carr's Justice or something like that. And that's kind of how I see those roles, because I have no reason to like make enemies with the aggro player when our goals are actually similar until the combo player is dead, and then we're at odds, right? Because the sweepers could reset their board, the counter spells or the kill spells might be able to lock their commander out, something like that. But even then, it depends on the deck. Like TPI is a mid-range deck versus like Old Flitterfang or Gary or Indulging Patrician, right? Like, got to be able to read that table.
So we've got a pretty detailed account of that third game, and I'm actually kind of jealous that I wasn't a part of it.
It was a great game.
Are there any cards, Obstinate, are there any cards in the deck that were lackluster, or did you have any overperformers? I know that you said that the mana advantage engines, the gold vein pick, and all that stuff were late re-editions, so you're probably thankful that you put those back in. Is the list going to change any, or are you happy with it where it is, or?
I found they've got a 5-cost dinosaur, 4/5 taps to do 2 damage to each opponent. Put that bad boy in. I changed the Bale's Invoker into just another X damage spell. Because playing out of the pocket when your opponent can't see what you're about to do, it was huge, a big part of it. Like Ryan,
yeah,
Ryan accurately like told the table game 3 what's going to happen. He's going to use that those 12 treasures to murder us. But of course, the table's response is, "Well, I'll see it when I believe it." Because I don't, they don't really see it coming. Big part of that is like what Ryan is saying. Keep it in your hand. I think, honestly, I mean, I was pretty happy with like everybody, like all the cards. I mean, I guess I dropped Bale's Invoker, but it did what it needed to in the moment. And like as soon as it hit the board, Ank was like, "I'm dead. I can't do anything."
Yep.
It was an attacker. But yeah, I mean, cards that did great. I saw Lava Burst 2 times in my hand. It got milled one time. Sure did that. Fire Blast, I had it 2, maybe 3 times in the hand. It landed. I mean,
Yeah.
you kind of mentioned how janky this card was when I played it, Ryan. But the 5-cost Faraday's Fireball, the 5 damage instant speed to a creature with the 2 AOE damage, I think that landed so well, and I had to use it to remove my own creature. I think that was I played 2 removal spells on creatures that entire tournament. I was able to just hold on to my cards and let other people do it till I could burn face with them.
Yep.
The only cards that I used on creatures were ones that also did damage to, like, a Barbed Lightning. So it did 3 damage to Tashar, and then it did 3 damage to Vol, or the Vol player that game. And then the Faraday's Fireball. Like, I mean, it's 5 mana, but what else am I doing? All the lands I played.
Yeah, and like that's a really interesting choice because you're valuing a card that does both of your objectives. It interacts with your opponents, but it also applies pressure to them at the same time. And
damage.
That paired with your token generation made 5 mana look like nothing, like absolutely nothing. It did not matter that card was 5 mana. Like, this is such an interesting structure for a deck, right? Like you're an aggro deck. You're proactive, right? You're proactive, but you're also like 37 lands. You have like these repeat ramp sources. Wales and I talked a little bit about Battlecry Goblin functioning in a similar way, where like Battlecry Goblin has everything built into it. It makes your army, it buffs them up, it gives them haste, and it's super cheap. So when I looked at that, I was like, shit. Well, this looks like a deck where I'd want to just have like all the rocks in it, like, and just never be priced out of my commander. Always be able to attack and produce more attackers and buff them up super huge. And in a way, your deck really acted the same way, proactive, but tons of, and you just didn't need to use your interaction either because everybody else was sort of priced into doing it instead. You just got to pass priority. Yeah, it wasn't. I don't really like the term priority bullying, but you used your table position because you were second seat, and Aranis with 4th seat, which is an awful place for Aranis to be, really, because that just meant everybody was like, "Yeah, I'll pass the buck." Like, Aranis, it's your problem, right?
Good luck, buddy.
Yeah. Well, so the thing I did for Aranis is I kept your health total close.
Yep.
So yeah, but no, absolutely. I mean, Abdel kept on trying to go off too. Like, I'm glad that I didn't have to use my Fire Blast on him.
Yeah, Abdel tried to cast Abdel like most of the turns of the game. I think Abdel got cast like 4 times, and the answer to Abdel, which a lot of people have incorrectly identified, but I think like other people is that you make it so you can't cast it, right? Like, and that's tax it out, right? It's a 5 mana commander. It gets expensive quick when they're casting it for 11. Then they can't hold up counter spells or flickers. So
even the people that play Abdel on a regular basis talk about it from the perspective of being a slow combo deck. So being able to just it's going to happen at a later time. You've got a little time to kind of.
It was a slow combo deck, but he led turn 3, I think it was, with Oblivion Ring, and then he had the Stitcher, the Scab. So like,
do you remember that Oblivion Ring? Do you remember what he targeted with it?
Your Loyal Apprentice.
And what did I do in response?
You put it underneath the Oblivion Ring, which
put it under the Oblivion Ring.
And why you would do that?
Literally do nothing. It's like I know if you're gonna release it. He released it a turn later. Yep. I don't need to get priced out of this. He's like, you're not slowing me down by 1 doctor.
No.
As soon as he realized that, he let it. I mean, he's just tried to combo off.
It was interesting that he did that instead of Aranis, because Aranis was his main problem. Like, if you think about like Abdel's problem, there is the commander that repeatedly kills his combo pieces and his Abdel.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So that was an interesting.
He didn't know how to deal with. I think it was kind of an indicator to me that he didn't have the wind in his hand, and he didn't know how to deal with my 1/1 flyers.
Yeah.
So that became the biggest threat to him. It's like, you know what? Maybe Abdel will die. I'll get some tokens. I'll be able to hold on to my board or like block, but what am I going to do about these flyers? So that kind of like that early to me said, you know what? I'm going to sit back, let you two either take it, like, you know,
Yeah.
we're going to sit here and do nothing, or like you two will take him out, or he'll try to go off.
Right.
I'm getting that commander back.
And that
I'm
the pinch
paid.
point there is really interesting too, because in Abdel, your answers to colorless flyers are really limited. You have because the answers that a lot of the sort of like meta Abdel lists that I've seen are running like Echoing Truth as an answer to that. They have Stonehorn Dignitary, which can lock you out of your combat potentially, or just take one combat away. But Prismatic Strands does not beat Thopters. Prismatic Strands has to choose a color. And so there was literally one answer in their deck, and you could stop that answer just like you did with me at any moment by just bolting the target for the Echoing Truth or the Echoing Decay that was coming your way, right? So the funny thing is that had he tagged the Aranis with the O-ring, he would have then made you and I very, very clear allies in killing him. Because if the repeat removal isn't on the table anymore, suddenly we don't have infinite removal to like address that thing every time. So combat damage player removal becomes the tool. So I think that was a bit of a pinch, right? Like having Aranis at the table as an Abdel player is like the nightmare, I would think. Like that's a bad draft, right?
In fairness, playing any deck with Aranis at the table is kind of a...
I mean, it can be. It can be. It depends on how important your things in play are.
Well,
right?
Well, it depends on if your commander's got an ETB effect or not. If you can get value, if like my deck, all my things, there's a few ETB creatures, but my creatures need to sit. My pingers need to sit on the board.
Yep.
My commander needs to sit on the board to generate value. So, like, yeah, he can just take away my ability to accrue value if he kills him. I mean, he's got to keep on coming up with, you know, fodder to kill it with.
So let's take these last few minutes to look at that accounting of round 3. I'm having this fear of missing out for something that's already happened that I'll never have access to.
Well, the recordings are all provided by Alex. Yeah, Trivial Encounters.
Trivial Encounters. I'll put a link to both of those VOD locations.
Thank you, lads, for recording.
Yeah, no doubt. On I'll put their YouTubes because the Twitch, if it's on Twitch, won't last beyond 2 weeks. I'll also link the bookmark that One More Game Chris had created that contains all of the lists, and of course, Obstinate's list will be at the very top of that. You'll get to see the other players, my and Ryan's list included in that bookmark. I cannot wait because this is the Apprentice is probably something I like. Loyal Subordinate because I love Mono Black Burn. So watching this one function as well, you know, it kind of grabs a hold of my little mono red heart, you know, and
yeah. Well, and there might be lessons to learn in the building of Apprentice that subordinate players could pick up on, and really aggro players in general, and Obstinate. You and I are both like Rakdos gut enjoyers. I think you and I both early on identified that Rakdos gut solves a lot of the problems that Boros encounters, like Boros gut being very like much more commander reliant, and that it gets blown out by sweepers so incredibly hard that you have to like build around that. You have to play a lot of weird cards like Shields of Elisvel, which are just like really bad cards, but like they do something that you have to do in the deck, which is gut has to live. Otherwise, the breath weapon, state-based effects, all the 4/1s die. Whereas the Rakdos, if you do sweep them and you have Iron Throne in play, it's like, okay, everybody takes 7. It's like, cool. And so you still got your damage in, right?
Well,
but I wanted to point out that deck, it ramps, right? Like Rakdos gut ramps, and it's a proactive deck.
Yeah.
And that's like
let's circle back to the to what we were seeing in the tournament.
Yeah, subordinate.
Yeah. For me, I was in a double, so I have one unique experience. Well, in fairness, they were all shout out to Cybermen Patrol, KD Combat.
Yeah.
Probably the most unique deck at the what do we call those decks? Rogue. The unique rogue deck at the event. I never considered what are those artifacts called again? Crew. I never considered
vehicles
and crew really before, and that kind of like changed my perspective on that. I personally, the most interesting game that I had was against Double Teshars, which is kind of fun when you're playing Cardor and you're trying to stimulate combat, but then they've got this like both these perpetual cycles where they're just bringing creatures in and out, and uh, poor Dallas. Puzzle Box, the only way I could just get him to stop, like he had the best value proposition on the table, but Jorbalicious, was closer to combo. So I had to basically wait till, between both combats that I was forcing, right? Because I was forcing combats between the two. I had to wait for Dallas to, like, his board to empty, and I killed him with a, I forget what kind of burn spell it was, but it was one where you sack a creature, deals 4 damage to any target. I forget what the name of it is, but I had to remove him with the threat of Jordy, comboing off on the next turn, and basically they beat me with an aura'd up Teshar, dealing 4 damage. And I hit a land pocket. I just land, nothing, and that allowed them the opportunity to basically kill me with a pantsed up Teshar. So that was
Teshar is a remarkably can be a remarkably resilient combo deck when it gets the pieces it needs. The trouble, of course, is just getting the pieces you need, because the deck doesn't have great sources of like card advantage. It has card selection with mill, which is really interesting, because like a Ghoul Caller's Bell turns out to be kind of like an extra hand is in your graveyard, and graveyard hate is a really hard thing to play like a lot of without like diluting your deck to the point where it doesn't just like have good answers for everything else. And Teshar just happens to be a deck where, like, Teshar is the thing that needs to die. Usually, if you're like worried about that deck, because it's the thing enabling that graveyard to be a second hand, where they're like looking at their graveyard and they're like, well, I'm going to get back like a Crimson Acolyte and an Obsidian Acolyte and loop these things ad nauseum.
And
you do the same thing you do the same thing you do to Abdel with that. You just lock them out of playing their commander. Teshar was I played Teshar 3 times that tournament. Luckily Ray Vamati was in 2 of those games, and it really kind of, Ray and I, Kadira and Loyal Apprentice, the token creatures, just kind of came down.
So I've only played against Kadira one time, and that was in the brewing process. I think it's another very interesting deck. It's not I wouldn't consider it a rogue deck because it's got been.
Oh, it is.
Right, but what I'm saying is
it's like, rogue.
but it's I'm thinking of rogue in terms of like meta establishment. Ray's been playing Kadira for quite a number of months, and it is highly tuned. So because it's highly tuned,
well, it's very clear what it does.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I think that's like the Cyberman one, being about vehicles, might not have been the first thing that people would have thought of. But with Kadira, it's like very clear. It's like, oh, we're going to double our squirrels or the rabbits or whatever they are. Right. Like, yeah. Echoing courage kind of things.
Tell me, myself and the viewers who have yet to play against Kadira, it's a snowball, right?
Yeah.
They go 2 ways, honestly. It goes 2 ways. Kadira can get big. Ray had, it was a game 1. I mean, Ray had the Great Sword of Tyr, adding a counter to Kadira every turn, tapping things down.
Really good.
Yeah, I think maybe it was game 4 that I played. What is it, Blood Frenzy? I buffed Kadira, so it got through and also killed it. But okay, so I feel like the game 3 was the trickiest one to navigate for me. But game 1, kind of almost like I thought I had lost it. Ray had gotten really big. I couldn't race Ray in time to beat their health. But Ball, in like the 3rd player slot, went infinite on mana with a Pack Beast. So it's like Vol would tap, and then like he had an untapper, whatever. He didn't have any combo. He did go infinite. He did summon. He did transmute for a Drowned in Sorrow. And as soon as Ray killed Teshar player, we'd work together on it. But Ray really did most of the lifting. he dumped the Drown and Sorrow out. I'm like, my board goes because they're all like 1/1s. Or I mean, they're all 1 toughness.
Right.
It was like I knew I was the next one. I was going to die, like next turn to Ray, if that hadn't happened. And so all of a sudden, the other combo player loomed their head up right in time to like start sucking up the tension. And then, I mean, for me, kind of like what you were saying, Clay, was I had to blow Ray out that turn and be like, all right, if you've got it, Vale, go for it. Like, I don't have it. I say, great. I'll kill you on my turn. So,
and can you clarify when you say Vol, which how do you spell that and which commander is that?
VHAL. So it was tapping to add. It was a blue commander with partner.
VAGL?
No, VHAL.
Yeah.
It was played by Tonus Balonis.
Yeah. If you've got I'm looking at the top deck.gg. Yeah, I've got the. That would have been
Yeah, Candlekeep Researcher paired with what?
Agent of the Shadow Thieves.
Oh wow, interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of goofy.
That's rogue too.
He plays that deck in cEDH, and he wanted to make a cPDH version of that list.
Got it.
I mean, it like as soon as the hard combo player was gone, Tashar. Yeah, like he all of a sudden was like, all right, it's my turn to be the villain. And he wipes the board, puts me back into like, you can't really do anything state. So it really just like, because I mean, we were headed to like Ray was going to bust down on me or I was going to bust down on him. And it kind of just slowed everything down and allowed us to get back into, all the health totals are going down game. So
yeah,
that was critical for me getting through that first game.
So in these final moments, and I wish we could go all night, I want to give a big shout out to both Chris, One More Game, and Alex Arnett of Trivial Encounters.
And J-Bro.
J Row.
J-Row. Yep. Sorry, J-Row.
It was a wonderful event for a wonderful reason. The flavor, as a veteran myself, the flavor of holding an event the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month to support veterans. You got to love that kind of stuff. I do. Went relatively well. Everybody's first outing has a little bit of a rocky. Anybody. So
well, and even like the obviously, like, in tournaments, we always want to have like a judge and things like that. But in the same vein too, that just meant that there was more money to give to the charity, 50% of it going to the, let me recall what it was. It was Digital Assets
Project.
The Headstrong Project. That's right. Exactly. Which helps with mental health. Yep. Better mental health. So so that was great. That just meant more money went there. And tournament was super, super fun. I mean, I had a blast. It was really great to get games in with everybody. The dynamics in the games that I played in were very interesting. And even game 3 or game 1, which I was unfortunately in a 3-player pod, which it could have been a lot weirder for me for sure. But like Indulging Patrician relies on extort gaining you 3 life, and when there's only 2 players to drain from, it only gains you 2. So that was interesting. I ended up taking the game anyways, just because the dynamic at the table and favored me winning. It was I think I just drafted well on it. But just in general, everybody was a pleasure to play with, and a lot of very interesting matchups and a lot of fascinating decks. Were out at this, were out in force, and none of them seemed unreasonable. Even I think KD Combat's deck, which initially I think I discounted in my brain, like, okay, this maybe looks like somebody who hasn't played the format before, but
that Sky, whatever
the vehicles and everything, and I mean, the Sky Skiff. Yeah, I mean, the vehicles angle on it is actually really unique and really interesting. And playing a deck like that, you will never, ever be targeted at the table. So there's like this trade-off, perhaps, to look at, where it's like if you play a slightly lower power deck, you get interacted with less, right? People discount you, and that's to your advantage. So I loved seeing that. Was there anything else that kind of clicked for you, Obstinate? Looking at the lists.
Well, now that you brought up her deck, I did play against her in fourth round. I played against her in maybe the second round.
Mm-hmm.
Was it? Yes, the second round. For me, being the faster aggro deck, she was absolutely the one I wanted to 1v1. When it went to like game 2 and game 4, it came down to me versus her, and I was like, all right, we're gonna do this through combat.
Yep.
So I liked having another aggro deck that was slower than me in the pocket. That head to head. That worked out for me. I think that was a big part of game 2 and 4.
Yeah.
But no, I liked it a lot. I played Ray's Kadira twice, and I mean it was a lot of working with Ray to make sure the combo player. It was Tayshar. Both times it was the same Tayshar player, actually Jordy. But working with Kadira to get him off the table, and then somehow bamboozling Kadira out of the win was the big thing on those games too. So yeah, I think that he definitely deserved.
Never underestimate the bamboozle.
Yeah. And I wanted to mention one other thing, just about the deck choice that I had with Indulging Patrician. I've been really captivated by Orzhov and just the mechanic Extort lately, and I think for good reason. The ability to
Master Brad would be proud.
Oh yeah. Brad Drac V from the PDH pod is stirring in his crypt, awakening with his Orzhov menace. He is the Orzhov pontiff. I chose Indulging Patrician as a bit of an experiment, because Indulging Patrician allows you a tool for applying a lot of pressure with the pairing of Extort. So the idea that you have a deck that can grind and gain a lot of life and stay alive until the late game, where then the Patrician starts to really apply a lot of pressure through that. And I think that one of the things that I observed about it is that a lot of times Extort being only 1 damage is actually kind of to its advantage, because the Extort is not killing anyone fast and you're just sitting there staying alive. And that's exactly what you want to do. So Indulging Patrician was an interesting experiment in that sense, because it makes 1 damage into 4. And 4 is a lot more. 4 is 12 to the whole table. 4 is over that, it's 15% of everybody's life total every turn. And that's a lot. So I'm kind of looking again at Orzhov and the sort of commanders we have available. And I think what I'm going to be looking at again is a Denethor, which is
Denethor.
Yeah, Denethor, same mana cost. It's a 2/4. So again, it's a black 4 toughness creature that's very hard to kill, that supports Pestilence really well. It gives you bodies, and it also has the ability to turn up the heat by sacking things to drain the table. And producing bodies passively gives you the ability to use those bodies for the most efficient draw spells in black. Costly Plunder, Deadly Dispute, Reckoner's Bargain, and the new Fanatical Offering. Which incentivizes a whole other series of cards like Ichor Wellspring, Mephitic Draught, your things like that. So I think, in just wrapping back to that question about are there any things I would do differently or with Obstinate, I think I'm going to be looking at Denethor again, because I don't know that I value the damage that Indulging Patrician did, in that it made me a threat sooner than I wanted to be. Right?
It made you a threat at the wrong time.
Exactly.
When everybody's health was low.
And everybody's talking about closing power, saying you need to be proactive. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to indulge that thought a little bit, make it a grindy deck that has a proactive element to it. And I don't think it's correct. I think that it's more correct that you will win the game in the long run if you survive. And that's what you want to bet for, not trying to amplify the Extort.
This is interesting. Because after my Cardur experiment, which was basically what I considered to be an evolution from Conrad, I'm actually going back to Sir Conrad. So because I discovered that the way that I had built Conrad, which is the rat plan, puts a lot of downward pressure, but Cardur creates this opportunity where you have to almost go through this circle, this cycle, whereas Conrad, you just leave it in play and just dump mana into it. So
And Conrad also has gotten a lot of tools to play more of a mid-range game with like ramp and things like that in it, where you don't have to be the immediate threat all at once. You can actually just nickel and dime people just by what they're doing to themselves sometimes. And so I think that's a really exciting game plan too. But that's really the only change that I'm looking at making, is potentially moving into Denethor with that. So other than that, yeah.
All right, my man Obstinate, you've got the last words. Thank you again for joining us tonight, saying yes. I'm so glad I could highlight you as a player, which I think is vastly important to the development of our humble little meta, is like showcasing what individual players contribute to this game. I'm glad you built a badass deck. I'm glad you like took down the event. I'm glad you're a stellar freaking dude. So
Thank you.
who lives like 3 hours away from me. That we've never played a game, so gonna have to change that at some point in time. So I'm gonna give the floor to you. You got 30 seconds, and then we'll close out. Just send us home, baby.
All right. Well, I guess what I would say is, yeah, play to the table, find your role, and stick to your role, because that is what got me through that every single time. Don't let other players pigeonhole you into doing something. You may have to be vocal about it. Tell players how you're going to play, and just kind of like, just like, I'm losing the word here now. Just like demonstrate to everybody that you're not the threat when you do it. Like, to what Ryan was saying about like survive, try to last as long as you can, but also play from your hand. Like keep information from your opponent so that they can't anticipate what you're going to do, and then maybe you'll be able to dome them with an X equals 10 spell. So, or a pump, a 2 pump all. I think was my other big one. Was a bunch of flyers and like plus 2 in the air. They're all 3 power now. So
perfect. Yeah. That's perfect. Okay. VODs for the event will be in the description, along with a link to the bookmarks for all of the decks. Obviously, look for first next to Loyal Apprentice, and then I guess the data as of now, as of recording, the data for the event is already on the website. I've asked Bodarn to do some analysis and stuff like that. We've got a couple of analysis, a Q4 2023 year in review. There's a couple of additional academic questions that I've asked him to look at for the data itself, because my RC brethren have asked me some silly, stupid questions. I mean, they're great questions. So all of that is like forthcoming. And if you need anything from my man here, Obstinate, where can they find you?
I mean, Comic Connoisseurs, hang out one more game. I'm in that Discord too. Catch me in a pickup game. Catch me on Moxfield, Bad Squeaker. Yeah, Bruin.
Yeah.
Yep.
Righteous. And then my man Ryan, thank you for joining me. It's been a minute. I figured I'd bring you over to the little YouTube channel.
Always a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey,
and again, thanks to Alex and Chris and J-Ro for hosting this incredible tournament. And we'll look forward to seeing you all in the battlefield.
All right. Peace out, bye.